Rain fell hard on the dusty plains of Nova 13. The ground had turned into thick mud, and most people had already gone home, but Jacob stayed outside. Checking the fences of his farm, something felt wrong in the air. He walked slowly along the border, his boots sinking into the soft ground. Then he saw it movement near the edge of the trees. He stopped, narrowed his eyes, and stepped closer. At first, it looked like a pile of wet clothes, but then it moved again. Jacob's heart beat. Faster, he rushed forward and stopped in shock. There, lying in the mud, was a woman, not human. Her skin was pale violet. Covered in dirt and bruises, her hair was soaked and tangled with leaves, and strange metal cuffs were around her wrists and ankles. She looked half dead. Jacob knelt beside her. He didn't speak right away, just watched her chest rise and fall, slowly. Painfully. "Hey," he said gently, "can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, bright silver under the dirt. She looked at him with terror, trying to move, but she was too weak. Her cracked lips moved, but no words came out. He leaned closer, and finally she whispered one word: "Help." Jacob didn't waste time. He lifted her carefully. She was cold, too light for someone her size. Like she hadn't eaten in days, he carried her through the mud into a small farmhouse and placed her on the couch by the fire. She shivered hard, eyes half closed. He quickly grabbed blankets and a clean towel, then stared for a second, unsure how to begin. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, more to calm her than anything else. He began cleaning the mud off her skin. Slowly, gently, layer by layer, it came off, revealing long scars, old bruises, and glowing marks near her neck. Maybe a brand, maybe a tracker. His hand stopped there. The device blinked red. He stared at it, then looked at her again. "Who did this to you?" But she didn't answer, just closed her eyes. A single tear sliding down her dirty cheek. Jacob covered her in a warm blanket, boiled some water, and mixed in a bit of broth. She couldn't lift the cup, so he helped her sip it. Her eyes never left his, confused and scared. That night, she slept on the couch, curled tightly like a child, her hands still shaking, her legs twitching like she was dreaming of running away. Jacob couldn't sleep either. He kept staring at the glowing tracker on her neck, wondering what kind of trouble he had just brought into his house. At midnight, the signal blinked again, this time brighter and far in the sky. A distant flash lit up the clouds. Someone had received her location. Jacob went outside and checked the night sky. His hand tightened around the old blaster he hadn't used in years. He thought of turning her over, letting them take her. After all, she was an alien, and he didn't even know her name. But then he remembered her voice. Help. The way she said it wasn't just fear, it was pain, sadness, and something worse. She had already accepted she was going to die, and somehow she had lived. He walked back inside, sat next to her, and whispered, "Whoever you are, you're safe here now." As the rain poured outside, she stirred under the blanket. Her hand slowly reached out and grabbed his. She didn't open her eyes, but her grip tightened. Jacob didn't let go. He stayed with her the rest of the night, unaware that far above, a ship had just entered orbit, scanning for her exact signal. The woman in the mud had been found, but not by the ones who wanted her dead. She had been found by a human who didn't ask questions first, and that might change everything. Jacob woke up before sunrise. His hand was still in hers. Her skin was warmer now, her breathing deeper and steadier. For a moment, he just watched her, trying to understand who she was and why someone would leave her like that in the mud. The fire had died down, but the warmth still lingered. He carefully pulled his hand away, stood up, and walked to the kitchen. He made a light breakfast, his eyes constantly checking the door and windows. The blinking red light on her neck hadn't stopped. He needed answers. But more than that, he needed to keep her alive when she finally opened her eyes again. Her voice was stronger, but still soft. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice had a strange accent. Beautiful, but heavy, like she hadn't spoken in weeks. "You're safe," Jacob replied. Placing warm tea near her lips, "My name's Jacob. This is my farm. What's your name?" She hesitated. Her silver eyes met his for a long moment. Then she looked away and whispered, "I don't remember." He didn't believe her, not completely. But he didn't push. She had cuts on her arms, scars across her back, and her body shook when she tried to sit up. That wasn't someone lying for fun. That was someone who had forgotten how to trust. He helped her wash again, this time gently scrubbing away more layers of dirt and pain. Her arms trembled as she raised them, revealing strange black tattoos along her ribs. He had seen things like this before, markings from slave camps, or worse, when he reached the metal collar on her neck. She froze, her eyes wide, breath short. Her voice broke. "Please don't touch that." Jacob nodded. He backed away and gave her space, but his mind was already working. That blinking collar was a problem. If someone had her signal, they'd come soon, and he didn't have weapons strong enough to hold off a full search team. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out and she collapsed into his arms. He caught her without thinking. Her head rested against his chest, and for the first time, she didn't flinch from his touch. I can help you remove the collar," he said carefully, "but you have to trust me." "No," she whispered. "If it's removed wrong, it kills me." Jacob had heard of such tech, evil designs used by traffickers, one wrong cut, and the thing would fry the person's nervous system in seconds. Whoever had put this on her didn't want to find her. They wanted to own her or erase her. He gave her clothes, an old shirt and blanket, and helped her walk to a small room behind his kitchen. She rested there while he searched his old tools, pulling out a device he hadn't used since the war. A scanner. He ran it over the collar and it beeped softly. His eyes narrowed. "It's got a dual-core trigger," he whispered. "One wrong pulse, and—" He didn't finish the sentence. Outside, a ship passed overhead, low and silent, scanning. Jacob turned off all lights, pulled the curtains, and waited with the woman in the corner. She trembled again. Not from cold, but from memory. "They'll kill me," she whispered. "If they find me?" "Not if I have anything to say about it," Jacob replied. After an hour, the ship moved on, but it wouldn't be the last. Jacob knew this was just the beginning. Later, while she rested again, he noticed something strange. A beige skinwear, it had been bruised, was healing fast. Almost unnaturally fast. He stared. Then looked at her sleeping form. Maybe she wasn't just a slave. Maybe she was something more. He sat near her, watching her breathe, and noticed something else. Her hands were glowing faintly in the dark, a soft blue light pulsing from her fingertips. He didn't wake her. Just whispered quietly to himself, "What are you?" But deep inside, he already knew. This woman wasn't normal. She wasn't just a victim. She was something rare, something powerful and very, very dangerous to the people hunting her. He stared at the collar again, then at the sky. He had no idea what he had brought into his home. But now that she was here, he wasn't going to let anyone take her away. The next day, the rain had stopped, but the ground outside was still wet and soft. Jacob walked around his farm, checking if any tracks had been left behind by the ship that flew over last night. He found nothing, but that didn't make him feel safe inside the house. She was standing on her feet for the first time. Her hands shook as she leaned on the wall for balance, but her eyes looked brighter, clearer, stronger than before. "You should rest more," Jacob said as he walked. She didn't respond, just kept staring out the small window. Her voice came a moment later. "I need to leave," Jacob frowned. "You can barely walk. They're still looking for you." She turned slowly toward him. "You don't understand. If they find me here, they'll kill you too." "I don't care," he said quietly. "You're not going anywhere until I get that thing off your neck." She looked down, her fingers brushing the metal collar gently. Then she nodded. Just once, Jacob went into his storage room, pulled out his old war-tech case. Inside was a delicate tool set he once used to defuse bombs. He hadn't touched it in years. But today, he'd need a steady hand and nerves of steel. When he came back, she was sitting still in the chair. Her hair had been brushed behind her shoulders, her neck fully exposed. The blinking light on the collar still pulsed slowly, silently. "I can't promise it'll work," Jacob said as he knelt beside her. "But if we do nothing, they'll find you." She nodded again. "Do it." He took a deep breath, opened the toolkit, and began. The process was slow. Each microwire had to be cut in perfect order. Each circuit had to be cooled before touching the next. One wrong move, and the collar would send a fatal shock through her brain. As he worked, sweat dripped down his face. His hands never stopped. But his heart was pounding in his chest. She didn't move once. She sat completely still. Like she had done this before, like she was used to fear. Then the collar gave a soft click. Jacob stopped, his fingers frozen in place. The blinking light turned off. He gently pulled the metal away from her skin and dropped it on the table. It didn't explode, didn't spark. It was just silent now, dead. She reached up and touched her neck, her eyes filled with tears. And for the first time, she smiled. A small, tired smile, but it was real. "Thank you," she whispered. Jacob sat back, exhausted but relieved. "Now, maybe you'll tell me who you really are." She was quiet for a long time. Then she stood slowly and walked to the mirror. She looked at herself for a while, like seeing a stranger. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke. "My name is Syria. I was not always like this." He waited, not rushing her. "I come from the house of Veril, one of the 5 royal lines of Corin," she said. "But when I refused a marriage contract, they stripped my title, beat me, and sold me to traders like an animal." Jacob didn't speak. He could feel her pain in her voice, deep and raw. "I was passed from one owner to another. Then they fitted the collar, and I stopped fighting," she said. "I forgot who I was. Until you found me." He stood beside her. "You're still her. You're not broken, Syria." She turned to him, her eyes wet. "You don't understand. I'm not just a runaway. My name carries power. The people who want me dead, if they find out I'm alive, they'll come with armies." Jacob didn't look afraid. He just nodded slowly. "Then we better get ready." Suddenly, a sharp beep came from outside. They both froze. Jacob ran to the door and looked through the window. A drone hovered above the field, scanning. Syria grabbed his arm. "That's not just any drone. That's royal military tech." "Then they know you're here," Jacob said. "No," she said, shaking her head. "They're not here to kill me. They're here to confirm if I'm alive. If they see me, everything changes." Jacob turned back to her. "Then what do we do?" Syria stepped forward, her voice calm. "We let them see me." Jacob stared at her like she was mad. "You just said they'll bring armies." She nodded. "Exactly. But not for war. If I claim my name again and show them I'm alive, they'll have to listen. Some of them were loyal to me once, and if they're not?" he asked. She looked at him, her voice quiet but steady. "Then I die standing." Not crawling in the mud, Jacob didn't argue. He just stood beside her. For the first time since he found her, she looked like someone who had once worn a crown. High above the clouds, the drone rose quietly into the sky, carrying with it the image of a woman thought dead. Hours later, in the center of a grand alien city, inside a cold and silver palace, the footage played on a wide screen. Silent soldiers watched, but one figure at the front of the room clenched his fists. "She's alive," he growled. His armor shimmered black and gold. and his eyes burned with hatred after all these years. She dares to show her face. He turned to the room. Send the retrieval order. Use my mark. One of the soldiers hesitated. Sir, if she is alive. The law says I don't care about the law, the commander snapped. She was promised. To me, she escaped her duty. She belongs to me. Back on the farm, Jacob didn't know what storm was coming. He spent the next day reinforcing the windows and digging up an old emergency comes jammer. Syria helped. Her body stronger now, her steps steady, her voice clearer, sharper. Her royal side was beginning to return. At night, she stood outside. Watching the stars, Jacob brought her tea, but she didn't touch it. They'll come soon, she said quietly. I can feel it. Jacob stood beside her. Do we run? She shook her head. If I run again, I'll never stop running. No? We stay. We make them listen. Jacob nodded, but deep down, he worried. Syria was brave, but she was still healing, and he was just a man with old tools and a small farm. 2 nights later, the sky lit up with silent lightning, a sleek black. Ship landed in the far corner of his land, just beyond the hills. No warning, no signal, no attempt at peace. Jacob stood on the porch, blaster in hand, Syria beside him with her chin held high, her hair now tied back, her body dressed in clean clothes. Her collar was gone, but her eyes were full of fire. 4 armored figures walked toward them, silent and tall. Their weapons were not drawn, but their hands rested close to them. The leader stopped just 10 feet away and removed his helmet. His face was sharp, cold, and filled with anger. Princess Syria of House Varel, he said with mock respect, you are summoned by royal order, under the mark of Commander Dravik. Syria didn't flinch. I don't answer to Dravik. He lost that right when he sold me. The soldiers, I twitched. You were not sold. You were declared property, under failed union contract. Jacob stepped forward. She's not property. Not now, not ever. The soldier looked at Jacob for the first time. You must be the human, he said with disgust. Step aside. This doesn't concern your kind. Jacob didn't move. The soldier raised a small black device. We will not harm her yet, but if she refuses to come, your farm will be burned, and you will be arrested for harboring royal blood without approval. Syria stepped forward, her voice calm but powerful. Tell Dravik this. I'm alive. I remember everything, and I claim my right to speak before the High Circle. If he touches me again, it will be war. The soldier's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. You have no army, no allies. I have my name, she said. And that's more than you ever had. For a moment, there was silence, then the soldier put his helmet back on. Very well, the message will be sent. But if Dravik gives the kill order. He didn't finish the sentence, just turned and left. The ship lifted quietly into the sky, disappearing like a shadow. Jacob let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, that went better than expected. Syria turned to him. No, it didn't. He frowned. Why? Because Dravik will never accept me alive, she whispered. He'll send assassins next, not soldiers. Jacob looked out at the dark horizon. Then we better stop thinking like farmers, he said. We build a plan, and we don't wait to be hunted. Syria looked at him, her voice low. Jacob, I don't want you to get hurt because of me. I don't care. He said simply, you're not alone anymore. That night, neither of them slept. In the distance, quiet engines hummed in the sky. And someone in the stars gave the order to erase Syria forever. The days after the soldiers left were quiet. Too quiet. Jacob didn't trust the silence. Neither did Syria. She spent her mornings walking around the edges of the farm, touching the trees, the soil, like she was trying to remember something. From a long time ago, she stopped eating as much, slept less, and often stood near the fence line at night, her eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight. Jacob could feel that something inside her was changing. One evening, while Jacob was working on fixing an old motion sensor, he heard a crash behind the house. He ran, expecting to see a broken tool or a fallen tree branch, but instead, he found Syria standing in front of a large boulder split in half. The ground around it was scorched. Her hands were smoking. She turned toward him slowly, her eyes wide with fear. "I didn't mean to," she said. I was angry. I touched it and it broke." Jacob stared at the rock, then at her hands. He had seen weapons like that during the war, but never coming from someone's body. He stepped forward, calm and careful. "You're not just a royal, are you?" She shook her head. "I'm something more. Something I was told to keep hidden, even from myself." He waited, not speaking. "I'm not full Koran," she whispered. "My mother. She wasn't from our world. She was from a forgotten planet, long destroyed, but she gave me power, and they feared it." Jacob sat down beside the broken stone. "Now they'll fear it again." "No," she said, stepping away. "They'll try to kill it, erase it, like they always do." He stood too, voice steady. "Then we use it before they can." She looked at him, confused. "Use it? You said you want to speak to the High Circle, right?" Jacob asked. "You want to? Make them hear you. Remember your name?" "Yes," she replied, her voice quiet. "Then we make sure when you speak." He said, "They listen." Over the next few days, Syria began training. Jacob helped set up a field behind the house, away from anything flammable. At first, her powers flared wild burning trees, cracking stones, blasting holes in the ground. She cried the first time she lost control, fell to her knees, and begged him to stay away. But Jacob never moved. He just stood close, helped her up, and said the same thing every time. "You're not dangerous to me." She slowly began to control it, guiding the energy with her hands, focusing it through her breath. One night, she lifted a dozen stones into the air without touching them, her eyes shining bright blue. Jacob clapped softly, and for the first time, she laughed, a real, full laugh. Her walls were beginning to fall, and Jacob saw the woman behind the power, the one who had survived pain, slavery, and betrayal. But peace didn't last long. One morning, a message crackled through the old radio Jacob had forgotten he even had. A voice spoke through static, low and cold. "Syria of House Farrell, you have broken sacred law and claimed false power by order of Commander Drovic. You are marked for elimination." The message repeated 3 times, then went silent. Syria sat quietly, not blinking, not breathing. Then she looked up and said something that made Jacob's skin crawl. "They've sent the shadows." Jacob frowned. "What does that mean?" She stood slowly. "Assassins trained to erase people without a sound. They're already close. They always are." Jacob grabbed his blaster. "Then we prepare." "No," she said. "You don't understand. The shadows can't be fought the way you fight soldiers. They don't care about justice or rules. They were trained to kill things like me." Jacob didn't back down. "They've never met me." Syria stared at him, her lips trembling. "I don't want to lose you." "You won't," he said, stepping closer. "Not without a fight." That night, the wind howled through the trees. The lights inside the farmhouse flickered, and even the animals stayed silent. Syria and Jacob didn't sleep. They sat back to back, watching every door, every window, every shadow. Because now, it wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was about surviving the night. The wind outside had gone still, too still. The kind of silence that didn't feel natural. The kind that warned of danger hiding just beyond the trees. Jacob sat near the door, blaster in hand, while Syria stood barefoot on the wooden floor. Her eyes fixed on the darkness outside. Then it happened. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. Total blackout. Jacob stood quickly, flashlight in one hand. Weapon in the other, Syria didn't move. Her voice was calm, but cold. There. Here, a soft creak came from the back window. Then another near the roof. Shadows moved without sound, not even a breath. Syria raised her hand slowly, and her fingertips glowed faint blue, just enough to light the room. Just enough to show Jacob what was coming. 3 figures dropped silently. From the ceiling, dressed in black from head to toe, faces covered, blades in hand. They didn't speak, didn't hesitate. They came straight for her. Jacob fired without thinking. A bright pulse slammed into the first assassin, sending him crashing into the wall. But he got up again, not even screaming. These weren't normal soldiers. Syria stepped forward. Her hands glowing brighter now. One assassin swung his blade toward her neck. Jacob shouted, but before the blade touched her, Syria vanished. Her body turned into glowing mist and reformed behind the attacker. She touched his back gently, and he fell, completely still. Jacob was frozen for a second. What did you just do? I stopped his heart, she said softly. It's a trick they taught me when I was young. I was never supposed to use it. The other 2 attackers didn't pause. One charged Jacob, the other leaped toward Syria. The room exploded with movement. Blaster fire and silent blades clashing in flashes of blue light. Jacob ducked a strike and fired again, hitting his target in the leg. But the assassin kept fighting. Syria spun, her energy swirling around her like a storm. The air trembled. And the final attacker hesitated for just 1 second. That was all she needed. She raised both hands. And a wave of force exploded from her body, throwing the assassin through the wall. He hit the ground outside and didn't get up. Inside, everything was quiet again. Jacob leaned against the wall, breathing hard. You okay? Syria didn't answer right away. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes full of something strange pain, not from wounds, but from memory. I didn't want to be this, she whispered. I never wanted to become a weapon. Jacob walked over, took her hand gently. You're not a weapon, Syria. You're someone who survived what no one should have to. And you're not alone anymore. She looked at him, really looked, and this time when she spoke, her voice broke. They said I was broken, she said, that no one would ever protect me again, that I was only useful for power or pain. Jacob pulled her into his arms. They were wrong, outside. The night remained still, but not peaceful. The dead. Attackers would be noticed, more would come, stronger ones. But something had changed now. Syria was no longer afraid of herself. She sat with Jacob near the fire, wrapped in his coat, and stared at the pieces of the destroyed wall. For the first time in years, she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was ready. Tomorrow, she said, they would leave the farm. They would go to the capital, to the circle, and speak her truth. No matter who tried to stop them, Jacob nodded, already packing what little he needed. His life had changed forever the moment he found her in the mud. And now he was willing to follow her into anything, even a palace full of enemies, as the fire cracked and the stars turned overhead. Syria closed her eyes and whispered something. Only he could hear. Thank you for seeing me. And in the silence that followed, a new path was born. Not for a lost alien girl, but for a queen rising from the ashes. The royal city of Valkron rose like a silver mountain above the desert. Shining towers touched the clouds, and every street was guarded by soldiers in dark armor. No one walked in without permission. No one left without being seen, but that day, someone did. A dusty transport landed near the outer gates, small, unarmed, silent. From it stepped a man in worn clothes and an alien woman with glowing eyes and no collar around her neck. The guards laughed at first until they saw the crest burned into her palm. The mark of House Verrill. Whispers ran through the gates, into the towers and up to the highest floors of the palace. She's alive, they said. The lost royal girl, the half-blood, inside the great chamber. Commander Drovik stood before the high circle, his face calm, but eyes full of rage. "I gave the order to erase her," he said. "She was a danger to our bloodline, a disgrace to our law." An old circle member spoke, "And yet she comes to us on her own. Without an army, without war, we must hear her." Drovik turned sharply, but before he could protest, the chamber doors opened. Syria stepped inside. Head high, step strong. Jacob walked beside her. Silent but unshaken, his presence caused a ripple of confusion. No human had ever walked freely into this room. Not as an equal, the circle watched. Some in silence, others leaning forward with interest. The room glowed with gold light as Syria reached the center, then stopped. "I stand here not as your slave, not as your mistake," she said, her voice clear and bold. "I stand as Syria of House Farrell, blood of two worlds, survivor of betrayal, and daughter of power you tried to bury." Drovik stepped forward. "You are nothing but a half-breed. The law does not recognize you." Syria turned to him slowly, then changed the law. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Jacob said nothing, but his eyes never left Drovik. He could see it in the man's stance. He wasn't done, not yet. "Enough," one of the elders said. "Let her speak." Syria looked at each face, steady and unafraid. "You all knew what was done to me. You stayed silent. You let him sell me like a broken thing. But I didn't die in the mud. I didn't lose my name. I found it." She reached back and took Jacob's hand. "And this man," she said, "this human, he saw what none of you did. He saw me, not as a tool or a curse, but as a person. And he helped me remember who I am." Another circle member stood. "Then what do you ask of us?" Syria didn't blink. "Restore my rights and Drovik's command. Let me speak for my people not as a shadow, but as their voice." For a long time, no one spoke. Then the oldest elder turned to Drovik. "Do you deny her claim?" Drovik's face twisted. "She is unstable. Her powers are dangerous. She travels with a human filth." Jacob stepped forward at last. "She's more royal than any of you. And if you lay a hand on her again, I don't care what planet I'm standing on, I'll burn it down to protect her." The chamber went silent. Not from offense, but from surprise. A human had spoken like a king. Finally, the elder spoke. "Commander Drovik, your authority is revoked. You are to be held for questioning." Guards stepped forward and took him by the arms. He struggled, but the order was final. Syria watched him go, then turned back to the circle. "I will not ask for your forgiveness, only your attention. Because this is not the end of my return, is the beginning." The circle nodded slowly, one by one, and in that moment, Syria was no longer the girl in the mud. She was something greater. Later that night on the palace balcony, Jacob stood beside her, looking at the stars. "You did it," he said. She smiled. "No. We did it." He looked at her. "So what now?" She turned, eyes glowing softly. "Now I rebuild with someone who never looked away, even when I was at my worst." Jacob reached for her hand, and she took it. Far below, people gathered, some cheering, some watching in silence, but none turned away. Because the story of the girl in the mud was no longer a whisper in the dirt, it had become legend.